I'm Joe Biden, the senator from Delaware, and I don't really care if Kamala Harris likes this message or not. I'm not running for office anymore.
The economy is failing, and if I'm elected to 4 more years, things are only going to get worse. And so I, Kamala Harris, want to encourage every little girl in America to follow the same career path as me. Prostitution. When I was a prosecutor back in San Francisco, I was an ambitious young woman. If I thought a man could help me with my career, you'd better believe I was hooking up with him. Oh, yeah. Finally, I met the ultimate sugar daddy, San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown.
Willie Brown, who once dated Harris, says he's excited a black woman is on a presidential ticket.
It was wonderful to have that kind of ongoing daily activity relationship.
Now, Brown is widely credited with helping to launch the senator's career.
Willie was married at the time, and so I was what's called a mistress. As Willie Brown's mistress, I was given lucrative positions in California state government. These were essentially fake jobs, stealing from California taxpayers. For one job, I met just 2 days per month and was paid about $250,000 per year. And so when Donald Trump asks how I'm going to deal with Vladimir Putin or Kim Jong-un, well, let's just say I got a lot of experience dealing with powerful men. Some politicians do backroom deals. I do back rub deals. You know what I'm saying?
Take that, you backstabbing cackler. Now live from Times Square, it's That Kevin Show.
Somewhere in the bowels of the city that never sleeps
Kevin McCullough, radio host with Salem Media,
is a man also not sleeping.
Syndicated radio talk show host Kevin McCullough.
And that guy would like a word with you.
Many of you know him from as Votes
Of course that Kevin show is going to be great. The only thing that could be greater, of course, would be that Donald show. We don't have that, so we have that Kevin show.
Featuring the music of Dick Tunney and the Dream in Color Orchestra. Just ahead, her brain is twice as big as Biden and Kamala's combined. Caitlin Sinclair, sketch comedy, and a new animation from the Babylon Bee players. He is drilling for American energy, for America first. Ed Kovalik, assignment desk weekend with all the smirk that's fit to print, and patriotic songwriter John Carn with the #1 song in the country. And now, from Times Square, a man who twiddled away his week in the rolling fields of Colorado. Well, we don't know what he was doing. Why was he out there? Anyway, here's That Kevin!
I don't know, friends. It's going to be one of those things, I think, where Dave's just going to spend the rest of his life making stuff up about what, yes, you know exactly why I was in the rolling fields of Colorado this week. No, I wasn't there to observe nature. Stop it. I was there with my friends from the Prairie Operating Group, which I happen to own a piece of, and we were out there looking at our rig that is going to be fully functional before the year's end. It's got 8 wells on the plot of land, and it's been in production. They've been drilling the wells. And there's a process to how when you frack land, you have to go in there a very specific way. But I got to tour the whole thing. I got to see the whole thing. I had a hard hat and everything. Yes, they gave me a hard hat. Stop it. Anyway, welcome to the weekend, friends. Kevin McCullough, couldn't be happier than to have you with us. And sometimes I'm even amazed at sometimes when the mainstream media surprises me sometimes. Sometimes they come up with something that you didn't expect. And after the debate, and since the debate, you've seen all the commercials, and all the commercials for her are the same. I grew up in a middle-class family, and all the commercials for him are cool. They're like, hey, did you know this? Boom. I grew up in a middle-class family, but did you know this? Boom. He could have done more of the boom stuff in the debate, by the way, but he was tired. It was a bad night, whatever. He made the best argument at the end when he said, you had 4 years to fix it. Why didn't you fix it? And this coming week, you're going to see the juniors go at it. That's going to be fun. By the way, if you don't have anywhere else, that you're already committed to watching it at, why don't you check out the Salem News coverage of the debate? this coming Tuesday. My colleague Larry Elder will be kicking it all off and be going through. You might even see yours truly doing a little punditry work before or after, or both. I'm not sure. They haven't given me my call times yet. But we're going to be covering it, and I expect this debate to be a lot feistier than the last one. Because you just can't fight with Kamala. And she can't be reasoned with. And part of the reason that she can't be reasoned with is because she doesn't know her facts. Do you remember distinctly when she said in the debate that we don't have not one single troop serving in forward combat zones? Do you remember that?
I want to ask you about her comments about the military. She said during the debate this about the U.S. military. Let's listen.
As of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century.
Our fact checkers found that to be false, and I have a lot of experience in that area as well. There are currently 900 U.S. military personnel in Syria, 2,500 U.S. troops in Iraq. All have been under regular threat from drones and missiles for months. We also have action in the Red Sea. We also, every single day, the Navy SEALs, Delta Forces, special operators can be part of any sort of deadly raid. So why would she make that claim?
I think what's important here, Martha, is that Kamala Harris, in contrast to Donald Trump, demonstrated herself to be commander-in-chief. We are in a world where there are all sorts of conflicts, and it's all the more reason we need somebody who's serious and who supports the military. And just remember,
but Governor, excuse me, but she said there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone. That is not true.
Now, what you have right there is Martha Raddatz, who's sometimes not been so good in debates that she's hosted, laying the law down to Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey, who could not answer the question because it was the statement was so radically false on its face. And this is from ABC, the ABC that we wished we could have gotten more of this kind of thing from the night of the debate. But Lindsay and David, they weren't going to do that. They were just going to sit there and let Kamala say whatever ludicrous thing she wanted to say. So it's very refreshing to see that one of the senior analysts at ABC News, Martha Raddatz, who has covered war zone stories for years. She really has. To hold the feet to the fire of the lame talking point, swamp monster of Governor Maura Healey, to say that no, you don't get to gloss over the fact Kamala Harris did something in a way that I don't think very many people have ever wanted to do, but it had an immediate repercussion on the military. And if you don't know, you can go over to my Instagram. I posted this just a couple of days ago, but these were some of the guys in the forward operating combat zones that were watching the debate the night that it happened. Watch their reactions. It tells you everything you need to know.
I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world. The first time this century. What? But let's understand.
So where the are we right now?
Yeah, where are they? Combat zone, where are they at in Syria or in Iraq or in some other forward operating area? I have family that are in the Red Sea right now because the stuff's getting hot over there, and we've moved extra carriers and planes and everything else into there. You don't get to be commander in chief and be this idiotic and out to lunch on what is arguably one of the most tenderhook portions of history in terms of the global balance. You've got to be bringing leadership and calm to that mess, not whatever it is that you were raised in a middle-class family. Anyway, Kevin McCullough, we've got a lot straight ahead for you. Joining me next, Caitlin Sinclair, one of the smartest people on the punditry circuit today. She's the spokesperson for Turning Point Action. We'll get her thoughts on Lady Harris and others as we continue That Kevin Show.
From New York, it's That Kevin Show.
See, I knew it.
Come on, Kev. What's a few classified documents between friends?
I told you all the time. I knew it. I knew he had some too.
Here he is, That Kevin McCullough.
Welcome back. It's That Kevin Show from Times Square. Kevin McCullough, very glad to have you with us as we are digging into these, less than 40 days until the election. Some voting has already started to take place. And friends, that is why I'm going to talk about the election every minute between now and November 5th. You have maybe the most historic, maybe the most significant, maybe the most important choice to make that we've ever made as a country, maybe since George Washington and the founders. Like, we're talking about a radically different view of the world depending on who you vote for going forward. And to that end, I am glad to welcome back Caitlin Sinclair, who is the official spokeswoman for Turning Point Action. That's that great organization that Charlie Kirk founded, and this is the C4 portion of that organization, out there talking about issues and asking you to go vote. Some of you have already started in a couple of states, and I'm going to talk about the election between now and November 5th every day, because it is the most important election that we face. But Caitlin Sinclair, welcome. It's good to have you.
Good to be here.
There's a lot to be decided in this election. And this week, 158 Democrats voted against a bill that would deport illegal immigrants who commit sex crimes against American citizens. Now, I want those watching at home and listening by way of radio, 300 radio stations and 2 television networks, I want all of you to let the words of that sink in. 158 Democrats voted against a bill to deport illegal immigrants who commit sex crimes against Americans. Caitlin Sinclair, is this in step with what Turning Point USA and its action arm are finding on the campaign trail when you are out and about on college campuses talking to voters day in and day out?
Absolutely, Kevin. So this is the same party that tells you that they are for women, right? That they're fighting on behalf of women. This is an election on gender and saving females' reproductive rights. Meanwhile, this is a party that does not care about women. They can't define what a woman is. They don't care about our reproductive rights. In fact, they actually encourage women to work 9-to-5 jobs, to not want families, to not start a family, to not even get married, to not even pursue relationships anymore. They praise people like Chelsea Handler, who wakes up at noon and has nothing to celebrate or nothing to do and no one to take care of. And look at Laken Riley. Look at Molly Tibbetts. Look at the women that have been raped and murdered by the policies of the left. The same people, again, that claim to want to protect women. And now look at this bill that you're talking about, Kevin. This is exactly what we see on college campuses. And the sad part is, and I could say this as a female, the other females, the girls out there, they're falling for it. So wake up, girls, because what reproductive rights do you really have with this party? Nothing. This is not an election where we can vote based on gender or a single issue, which of course is the issue of abortion that they are shoving down our throats. The Democrats are very calculated. They took the most wedge dividing issue in this country and made this an election about gender. And the women out there need to understand that this is a party that does not care about them, because nothing screams more like I protect women when you're letting illegals that are unvetted into this country to rape and kill us. So the women in this country really need to wake up. And I really hope they're doing their research.
Well, I started the the show off tonight with a little bit of video from Kamala Harris. And Ivan, if you can put that back on the screen, this is her at an actual demonstration this week where migrants and supporters of migrants, illegal migrants, are chanting down with deportation and up with education. And the sitting vice president of the United States, as we can see on the screen, is chanting with these people, down with deportation, up with education. She's chanting down with deportation with illegal migrants that are chanting this, knowing that President Trump's proposed policy begins with deporting criminal aliens that rape, maim, and murder Americans. She's added it to her campaign speech, talking about the perils and the evils of deportation. I don't know what most Americans, I don't pretend to speak for most Americans, but my sense is, at least of the ones that listen and watch me and the ones that read my column at Town Hall, my sense is that these people don't view deportation of criminal murderers and rapists and terrorists as a dangerous thing for the future of Americans. Caitlin Sinclair, am I wrong?
You're absolutely correct. And again, this should speak to the larger sentiment here, which is right now in this country, women, and especially in these major blue cities, which I live in, Manhattan, are scared to step outside. They're scared to send their children to school. And why is that? It's because of this mass migrant immigration, illegal immigration problem where nobody feels safe. And every single day, the mainstream media won't tell you these stories. They won't highlight all of these headlines of women being raped and murdered and kids feeling afraid to walk the streets and all of this. Of course, these policies have an effect. Of course, this is affecting the greater good of our country, the infrastructure of our country, our values, our principles. It's affecting everything, but this is all by design. It's all by design. And I think the American people are waking up and they're not falling for it anymore. Look at what happened with Martha's Vineyard, right? You send these people to Martha's Vineyard, you send these people to the Obama's doorstep, and they don't want that. So I think that speaks volumes. And again, I don't think the American people are falling for this anymore.
Yeah. There is a news story, and Ivan, if we have this graphic, put this up, but 75% of the arrests right now, speaking of your city and mine here in New York, 75% of the arrests taking place in Midtown, in the heart of the most important city of the most important country on planet Earth. In the heart of this city, 75% of the arrests are being made against illegal migrants that are here illegally. And the reason they're being arrested is because they're the ones committing the crime. This is something that Kamala Harris won't acknowledge. This is something that people in Congress will not acknowledge. And yet, again, talk about the disconnect. She's chanting down with deportation when exactly the opposite is what the American people are asking for. Please take these dangerous, murderous criminals out of our midst and send them home. And that is the emphasis of what President Trump has talked about. He hasn't talked about, doing house-to-house sweeps and all kinds of stuff that Kamala Harris is trying to scare people into thinking. He's talking about low-hanging fruit. If someone commits a dangerous crime in this country, that's a one-way ticket back to where they came from.
You know, I recently just saw a story also. I think you and your viewers will remember a few months ago when women in Manhattan were going viral for posting about men punching them in the face randomly, which of course was horrible. Now, one of those same females that went viral for those videos is encouraging people to go to Kamala Harris's website and get out the vote. Really funny to me as a female talking to my contemporaries in New York. Are these women not correlating what they're voting for to then getting punched in the face? Like, is there no correlation between the policies here? Because I hate to laugh about something that's pretty tragic. Getting punched in the face as a girl is not fun when you're just walking the streets innocently in New York. But you're voting for it, girls. You're voting for it. So that same girl that went viral on TikTok for complaining about getting punched in the face is now telling people to go vote for Kamala Harris. I mean, this is exactly what we're talking about, right? It's a larger sentiment here. This is a microcosm of what's happening. Women are not doing their research. It's really up to the men and the fraternity brothers, Kevin, that are trying to save this country here.
Her name is Caitlin Sinclair. You can follow her on X at Caitlin Sinclair TV.
Stick around for more of That Kevin. Next, That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough. From New York, that Kevin McCullough.
Welcome back. It is That Kevin Show, and coming up tonight, the New Music Spotlight, the number one song in the country, the artist that has the number one song right here, That Kevin Show. You don't want to miss. That's coming up tonight at the end of this hour, so don't miss that. Caitlin Sinclair is my guest from Turning Point Action, and she has been kind of unfolding for us what a lot of people have been wondering about. And Caitlin, I understand what you're saying when it comes to the frustration with the single women, particularly in Manhattan, that know the real story. But I have a feeling that President Trump is breaking through on the messaging with particularly suburban women when it comes to the female vote for this go around, because unlike those single women that kind of feel like they're fearless and can do it all and overcome it all, no matter how, dangerous the place is, people are listening to folks like Megyn Kelly and others who are telling them, hey, your kids are at risk. And if you ignore this, and this is when I said this is a generational choice in terms of a vote, it doesn't get more contrast than the progressive, communist, socialist, Marxist worldview of Kamala Harris and the cabal that she's put together, and the, heaven forbid, America First viewpoint that Donald Trump espouses. I mean, the contrast is steep.
For sure. And, I think you're absolutely correct in the sense that Donald Trump is making waves here. Look, we're from Manhattan. There is no way that a few years ago we could be having these conversations and seeing such a shift happening in New York City. I wore a MAGA hat in New York City just a month ago. There is absolutely no shot I could have done that just a few short years ago. And let me add for your viewers, I was getting praise. I was getting cheers for wearing that MAGA hat. So there is absolutely a shift happening in New York. And you know why it's happening? Because these problems, the illegal migrants, all of these crises are showing up to Fifth Avenue, Park Avenue doorsteps. They're showing up on the Upper East Side where moms are trying to raise their young kids. So it's affecting everyone.
But beyond that, in the swing states, and particularly in the competitive states, it's interesting to have, as Donald Trump had at his convention, victims, families of our fallen in Afghanistan, victims, families of the brutal crimes of illegal migrants that came and told their stories, the victims' families of the hostages in Gaza that this administration has done literally bleeping nothing about. And then it was interesting to see the Democrat convention that you reported for us from, and to see billionaires like Michelle Obama and Oprah Winfrey, and since then, Meryl Streep and others that have come along and said, hey, you got to vote for Kamala because she's really the representation of the little guy, of the normal people. It's all billionaires and actresses and high-level celebrities for Kamala that are embracing her. And it really is the people of every day that are facing the torture of every day in what we have right now, that are supporting Donald Trump. And I think that message is getting through. What do you think?
I think this is an election about the forgotten American. This is an election about the American that feels that they don't have a voice in their elected career politician right now. You take the Bronx, for example, in New York. These folks have never heard from AOC. They have never seen Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez at her office. And a majority of these voters are African-American voters, and they're now voting for Donald Trump. They are now staunch supporters of Donald Trump in the Bronx. So anything is possible in this election. I absolutely agree. And if Donald Trump wants to continue attracting the female vote, I'll just quickly add for your viewers, I think we focus on MAHA. I think we focus on making America healthy again and the unity party, because that was such a powerful message we put out there. And I can tell you it will speak to the females. It will speak to the young voter. It will speak to the young new mom out there that wants the best for her kid. The women that actually care about reproductive rights and are actually doing their research on how we're being poisoned. MAHA and MAGA go hand in hand. So I think that is how we continue to fix that gender divide that we're witnessing right now between the two candidates.
Yeah, I generally tend to think that moms and women in general are very common sense, and they want safety, they want protection, they want an economy that works. In that Oprah town hall this last week, Kamala Harris was asked a very specific question: what will you do to increase the capacity for the cost of living for the little family like us? And she started off with her, well, I was born in a middle-class family, and she went to La La Land with all the stuff that all the gobbledygook that she talks about. It doesn't even turn into an actual solution. And someone asked me, said, Kev, well, how would you have answered that? I said, it's easy. You do what President Trump's doing. You say, I'm going to bring down energy costs, which brings savings on everything. Cheaper groceries, cheaper gas, cheaper electricity. It all works that way. But Caitlin Sinclair, thanks for being with us tonight.
God bless.
Kevin McCullough coming back from New York. Don't go away.
Stick around for more of That Kevin. Next, That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough. From New York, That Kevin McCullough.
All right, friends, it's so good to have you with us, and I want to thank you for being a faithful audience every weekend. I have been approached by one of the networks that carry us, the Salem News Channel, about adding a kind of new opportunity to take That Kevin Show, maybe to daytime for your weekends. And so just a programming note, we are looking at adding maybe a 1 or 2 hour additional opportunity to be together on Saturday and Sunday mornings on the Salem News Channel. And I think that would be exciting and quite different. Those of you that are used to us being with you on Saturday nights, don't worry. 2 great networks, television networks, 300 plus radio stations across the country, and the most syndicated and the most listened to weekend broadcast in America, period. End of discussion. We are grateful to be with you. I am also grateful. And I'm very grateful for the new opportunity. I think that's going to be exciting. And I'll tell you more about it. We're starting to look at sets and figure out what features should be included and so forth. But it's going to be exciting, and I look forward to that. I am also grateful that over the last 3 weeks, our efforts with Food for the Poor have just exploded. We went from having very few children fed for the next year. From where we started, we went from 0, and we were at still less than 50 just a few weeks ago. And now, because of your intentional involvement, more than 160 children will not go hungry in 2025 that live in Central and South America, in the most impoverished countries on the planet: Haiti, Guatemala, El Salvador. These are places where the children die every day by the dozens because of malnutrition, because of not having food, because of just being at a place where they just, they don't have any resources. There's no federal government. There's no Kamala Harris starting some sort of socialist Marxist feeding program that, would cover them. None of that exists. There is no Medicare. There's no welfare. There's no Medicaid. There's barely governments that have any infrastructure. And my friends at Food for the Poor, for many years now, well over 40 years in 17 of these countries, in the poorest spots, stepped up and said, we can do something about this. And through the generosity of Americans like you, they have been extremely successful. In fact, I need to allocate some time at some point to tell you some stories of some of the kids that have been fed and what they have done. Many of them thriving, going on and getting educations and coming back and helping the very neighborhoods that they grew up in. It's a real success story. But for those 160 kids, I am just nothing but deeply, deeply grateful. And I want to say thank you to you for being generous and saying that for a one-time gift of $80 next year, one of those children that are on that list of 600 will not go hungry. In fact, not only will they not go hungry, they will receive 2 meals per day, rice, beans, some important nutrients, sometimes some chicken protein, some chicken broth for flavor. There's other things that are involved in this recipe, but this specific recipe designed for children that are malnourished is going to satiate them, and they're going to be able to not worry about where their next meal is coming from when many of these children that we're talking about, and we're talking about exclusively the poorest of the poor. Many of these children that we're talking about will go up to 24, 48, 72 hours without having a meal that looks like a meal. I'm not including if they boil some tree bark and they're able to choke it down. That, to me, that's not a meal. They may put something in their system to try to satiate whatever, pray that their system digests it and doesn't ruin them for it. But that is the plight of orphan and underfed children all across the globe. Up to 72 hours in between anything that looks like an actual meal, actual food, actual sustenance. But because of your partnership in this, now 160 of those 600 kids will be fed twice a day, every day for the next year, and that's over 700 meals that you've delivered for a one-time gift of $80. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means that 440 of those children were not taken care of, and that means that starting in January, 440 of these children, their lives will be on the line, and we don't know what they're able to sustain. We don't know if they're going to be able to make it through another day or week or month, much less a full year, not having a very important nutritionally based feeding program that's designed for their bodies specifically. So here's what I want you to do. 855-349-4673. This is the last night that I'm going to be able to talk about this in this context, because we have other things to do between now and the end of the year. Very exciting things that I'm looking forward to, but this is the last night, and I don't want to end leaving 440 children hanging in the balance. I don't want them wondering. I don't want their parent wondering, will they be able to survive another year? For a simple gift of $80, one of those children can be removed from that list. And friends, if you do it tonight, we have a very generous matching donor that's going to step up and match your gift dollar for dollar. It's very exciting. So if we got 220 of those children fed, actually all 440 would be cared for. But we need your help to accomplish that right now. Maybe you have the ability to do something very grand. Maybe you could do a 10-kid gift at $800. Or maybe you say, you know what, for the next year, I'm just going to take $80 every month and I'm going to allocate it. And every month we're going to take a child off that list and give that child a full year's worth of food from that month forward. Whatever works best for your budget, whatever works best for the way you can handle it, please do so. The phone number, again, 855-349-4673, 855-349-4673. And a lot of you have given online at instagood.org, Insta, INSTAGOOD.
Stick around for more of That Kevin. Next, That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough.
Somewhere in the bowels of the city that never sleeps,
Kevin McCullough, radio host with Salem Media,
is a man also not sleeping.
Syndicated radio talk show host Kevin McCullough.
And that guy would like a word with you.
Many of you know him from as Votes
Of course that Kevin show is going to be great. The only thing that could be greater, of course, would be That Donald Show. We don't have that, so we have That Kevin Show.
Featuring the music of Dick Tunney and the Dream in Color Orchestra. To come, all the smirk that's fit to print, Assignment Desk Weekend, sketch comedy and a new animation from the Babylon Bee, and Patriot songwriter John Kahn back in the spotlight. And now, from Times Square, a man who loves the wide-open plains, but not for the purposes of observing the husbandry habits of buffaloes. Here's the
Gotta stop that, Dave. I was on an oil rig. How many times I have to tell you? Anyway, it's time to get to the news. For Assignment Desk Weekend, I'm Kevin McCullough. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu warned Iran this week to stop their efforts of tyranny. The Prime Minister's words were laced with seriousness and urgency as he spoke from the well of the UN. Perceived by some as even fierce or threatening, when the Iranian emissary raised his hand to ask the Prime Minister what would happen if they did not stop the tyranny, Netanyahu simply replied, "I'm sorry, is that your pager that's about to go off?" Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, got called out by residents in her own congressional district this week, claiming she is absent most of the time in her district and that the area has turned into the third world and that lawless anarchy dominates life. The presence of garbage on the streets, the increase of homelessness, the abundance of prostitutes all point to this deterioration. When Assignment Desk Weekend asked the Congresswoman for her response, the office just replied, "Sweetie, none of this is as bad as what we face in D.C. on a daily basis." North Carolina has just finalized the removal of 747,000 ineligible voters from their voter rolls. The State Board of Elections announced the number on Friday. The 2020, just for reference, the 2020 election for president in North Carolina was decided in that state by less than 200,000 votes. 747,000 found to be illegal. The spread was 200,000 in the last election. In perhaps the most fermented microbial story of the century, scientists in China have discovered bronze-aged cheese in the coffins of mummies from Xinjiang, the Xinjiang region. The cheese had been applied to the necks of the mummies at burial. Scientists were even able to prove that the cheese originated from goat's milk. The Sargento family of Wisconsin, whose motto is "Serve real, natural cheese," believes the Chinese mummies may have just been their ancestors. But we'll never know. And finally, the latest social media trend taking over the world might in fact kill you. Fridgescaping has become the newest hobby involving the interior decorating of one's refrigerator. Plants, picture frames, mirrors, and other non-food items are used to spruce up the decor. For who? For what? You know it gets dark in there. Sadly, health experts are discovering that combining non-food items into refrigerated food spaces can lead to the multiplication of bacteria at levels similar to food poisoning. Now, call us crazy, but Assignment Desk Weekend will not be fridgescaping our personal or corporate refrigerators. We believe in boring old darkness and cold to keep our food healthy, but that's just us. For Assignment Desk Weekend, I'm Kevin McCullough.
For years, I knew I was different somehow. I played in adult league softball, and I don't know. I It just didn't feel like the real me somehow. That's when I realized, I'm actually a 6-year-old, trapped in the body of an extremely athletic 4-year-old man. I'm Paul Cornell Jr., and I identify as a 6-year-old. And as a 6-year-old, I compete in the Cedar Valley Little Rookies T-Ball League. Go team. Here's my baseball card. It's a real collector's item. I had it printed at Staples.
Boom goes the dynamite.
I just belong here, I finally fit in somewhere.
You know what? Ah!
Paul, he's just a great kid. I mean, he's got those intangibles, the stuff you can't teach. I mean, speed in the base path, situational awareness, a little pop on the bat.
Yeah, baby!
And, well, he's, 2 feet taller, 150 pounds more than anybody else in the league. I mean, what are you going to do? Just a natural. Love the guy. All right, let's go, guys. Woo!
Are there bigots? Of course. And there's lots of ignorant people in this country. People that don't accept me for who I am on the inside.
Hey, that's not a 6-year-old. That's a grown-up.
You're out of here.
I feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
You're out. You're out. You're out. Quadruple play. MVP. MVP.
Despite the haters, I gotta persevere. Gotta live my inner truth, Because, really, I'm doing it for the little guy, okay? I'm doing it for, all those other real 6-year-olds out there that don't feel comfortable showing their real selves to the world yet. I'm doing it because, shoot, I'm a good person. If you disagree with me, I'll get you canceled and ruin your career.
I identify as a 5-year-old.
That's not fair.
Thanks for stepping into umpire, Mr. Fletcher.
Well, I'm an English teacher, not a phys ed teacher, but I'll do my best.
You'll do fine. Just call the kids safe or out. And keep an eye on them right there. They've been trying to steal.
Who, him?
No, we use the kids' preferred pronouns. He's on second. I mean them.
There's only one kid there. Who's them?
They are.
He is?
No, they is. He's on second.
You mean her?
Don't call me her. I'm a him. That's a he. The kid on third uses she.
He uses she?
No, she uses she.
And you want me to keep my eye on them?
Yes.
But especially him.
No, keep your eye on them. They've been trying to steal.
Who's they? Him, her, and him?
No, not him and her, just them. Their pronoun is there, and they're right there.
I'm an English teacher. I get pronouns. That's him, her, and him.
No, that's them, him, and her.
Excuse me, but now I identify as him.
He's gender fluid. He used to be she, but now she's him.
Huh?
And I'd like to change my pronouns to Z, Zim, and Zer.
Now Z wants you to call Zer Zim.
What's a Zim?
Don't call Zim a what? Now Z is offended.
Look, I don't want to offend anybody. I'll call them by their names. Kids, what are your names?
I'm Addison. Addison.
Their parents are millennials. They named them all Addison.
Well, why do I have to use preferred pronouns?
Because gender's a social construct and I was born this way.
How can he be born that way if gender is a social construct?
Whoa. Don't question their identity or his or Zer's. Just follow the rules and call them they.
Who makes these rules?
They do.
This they?
No, not that they. They.
Huh?
They will get you fired if you don't use the right pronoun. They will kick you off of Twitter if you question their beliefs. They cancel comedians that offend them. They get rid of professors with different points of view.
But who's they?
Nobody knows who they are. We just have to listen to them.
Welcome back to Times Square. It's Kevin McCullough. Always pleased to have you here. And anytime you want to know anything about the show, who we've had on, catch the podcast, join the social media, it's thatkevinshow.com. Thought it'd be pretty simple. Thatkevinshow.com. You know what else is simple? Oilfacts.com. We've been telling you about it for the past several weeks, and the purpose of telling you about it, well, you've seen played out on your TV screen. You've had two political conventions roll into your life and try to tell you one thing or another about energy, and the candidates that had those tickets trying to make their claims and where they're at. And it's one of the reasons why I feel so personally obligated to make sure that you have the information at your fingertips, and oilfacts.com has done exactly that. Ed Kovalik is the CEO of Prairie Operating Group. They are the driving force behind oilfacts.com, and it's been a fun little adventure, Ed, to have you on the show and to see the thousands of people that have responded that are becoming Oilfacts insiders and saying, hey, I want to know more about these facts, because it seems to me that we're not told this stuff anywhere else.
No, and that's exactly why we wanted to sponsor oilfacts.com, Kevin, because there's been really very little information shared with the public about energy. And the information that has been shared has been a lot of misinformation. And so somebody really had to tell the truth and educate the public in an apolitical way about the realities of energy.
You're being very kind in the way you present it, though, and I want to point this out. The opponents to fossil fuels are not kind. They are, in fact, pretty cutthroat, pretty ruthless. These facts are known to them in terms of how cutting off fossil fuels would impact, for instance, third world populations and make life infinitely more miserable for us if we were to adopt Kamala Harris's Green New Deal. People forget she was a co-sponsor in the Senate of that exact legislation. They play very cutthroat, and the consequences are very high for what they are wanting to force us to do.
I think when it comes to energy, Kevin, there are really two teams. There's one team represented by Kamala Harris, which really is a proponent of using a lot less of everything, including energy, a lot less availability of energy, a lot more dependence on the grid, which has, all sorts of problems related to that model with respect to just abundance and availability of energy. But let's not forget, you need energy for everything we do as a society. Energy is the basic input. So I think you have one team that wants to limit access to energy, and you have another team represented by folks like myself, certainly Trump's policy, common sense people that are really on team human flourishing. We want humanity to prosper. We want folks in the third world to have the same availability to abundant, inexpensive energy, just like we have had in terms of building our economy on the back of that. So I'm proud to be on the side of human flourishing.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about that. I was making remarks related to this because I'm far more political than you are, as it related to Kamala's desire to price control groceries last week. Because I was thinking to myself, well, does she even understand the reason why groceries went up? Like, she thinks like that there's just some big grocery syndicate that's out there, working over the little man and saying we're going to put the boot on your neck. When in reality, if you cut off access to energy, which irrigates, produces, transport, and refrigerates all of those vital necessity groceries that you have, if you put the boot on the neck of energy, you're driving up prices way more with those policies than anything that a grocer who's maybe making 2% in profit on a really good year is ever doing to the consumer. Am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's a really comic position to take, the idea that grocers are price gouging. Last time I checked, the 2% margin isn't exactly price gouging, which, by the way, gas stations make about the same margin in selling fuel, less than that, about 1%. And so certainly if you extrapolate the position that Kamala Harris has, which is banning fracking in the United States, that would immediately lead to a pretty steep decline in production of oil and gas in the United States. And oil and gas accounts for 85% of all of our energy. And so anyone that's taken Econ 101 in college knows that, less supply means higher prices. And, I think in the case of energy, we'd see really dramatically higher prices at the pump, levels that we probably have never seen, probably in the $10 to $20 a gallon range, because, most of the oil and gas produced in the United States is produced with shale drilling and fracking. And that production declines very quickly. When you drill a shale well using fracking, you produce most of the reserves in that well in the first couple of years. And so, if you're not constantly drilling, you're going to be constantly declining.
And that's what their goal is. But on the other side of that, we have more abundance here than any country on earth, and domestic production of our own energy should be something that's prioritized. This is Kevin saying this. I want to see an administration come in that doesn't say, "Oh, okay, maybe." Like, I want them to be enthusiastic. I want them to get after it, because we have lost 3.5 years of development on that whole front. Let me ask you about this. I've heard you in some of the media that you've been doing the last few weeks talk a lot about AI farms and the coming energy electrical drain that those are going to pull. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but anything I touch on my phone now has an AI option, like my phone book, my Facebook, my Instagram, my Google, anything that I tap says, "Oh, try our AI." Why does using that use up so much more energy, and what is it about that is so dangerous to our current energy production?
Well, the computing power required for any kind of data center is really tremendous, and AI data centers really continue that theme and use ever more power. And so, in this age of AIification of everything that you're referencing, we're going to see an increase in electricity demand over the next 6 years, equivalent to what we saw over the prior 20 years.
Wow.
And so most of that demand is, has to be fulfilled by fossil fuels. And so the idea that you can have one and not the other, that we can electrify everything and not power that with fossil fuels, is kind of like driving a truck off a cliff and praying you're going to land smoothly.
Wow, that's a stark visual image there. Let me ask you this. Well, just as an example of what you were saying, in Paris just a few weeks ago, they actually were bringing some of the heat into the indoor pool events because the AI banks that are in Paris throw off a lot of heat because of the amount of electricity that they use. And I guess they were actually able to capture some of that and use for energy to do some of the warming for the pools that they needed. So it's very, this whole AI technology economy is going to be a different reality for all of us that, are used to the kind of brick and mortar type of approach. But fossil fuels, as you noted on a couple of your appearances this week, they haven't diminished at all. They're still the majority use energy product. We're talking with Ed Kovalik, coming right back after this break from Go In.
Stick around for more of That Kevin. Next, That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough. Here he is from New York. That Kevin McCullough.
Just a couple more minutes with Ed Kovalik here at That Kevin Show. Kevin McCullough, very thankful to have Ed with us. Ed, this has been a fantastic educational introduction for my audience. So many people have gone to oilfacts.com and they have said, wow, I never knew that. I've never heard this stuff before. Like what you guys are providing by way of the facts about fossil fuels just are not replicated anywhere else. And so thank you for doing your part as just a human flourishing fan to make sure that people know the basics of all this. I want to ask you about this kind of fifth big fact that you've posted there, which is that renewables, they sound nice. They may trick your brain into thinking that they are actually renewable, but when it boils down to it, without government subsidies and fossil fuels, You can't even produce the elements that they need to make renewable energy. Is this really true? Could this possibly be so?
Well, let's separate those two things out. Certainly solar and wind are not economic without subsidies. Even with the subsidies, there's barely any profit margin in them for the folks that are building solar and wind. So they're clearly uneconomic, but they're also really not renewable. You know, that term is a great marketing phrase. I suppose, you know, you're capturing solar power and you're capturing wind when both of them are available, depending on what time of day and season. But the things that you need to build to capture solar energy and wind are certainly not renewable. They're developed through strip mining of rare minerals around the world, which is devastating to the environment. And, you know, those assets don't last forever. They have a short life. They have to be scrapped. And so today, you know, many wind farms are sitting devastated with damage from hailstorms and other things, and they're completely not usable. They never even live through the, you know, advertised life of the asset. And wind farms, you know, you're kind of seeing, you know, wind farm cemeteries, especially in my great state of Texas, where they're burying blades and, you know, they're environmental disasters offshore because they disintegrate in the ocean and kill whales and other, you know, marine species. And so, you know, yes, solar power is, you know, perpetual and wind power is perpetual, depending on the time of day and season. But the way in which you capture them is certainly not perpetual, certainly not renewable. It's very dirty. And, you know, notwithstanding all that, it's also damaging to societies because, you know, a lot of slave labor is used around the world to mine those critical minerals required for those.
I don't think it's any by any mistake that when China strikes a deal with an African, you know, country somewhere because they found, you know, the rare earth minerals there, and then they basically pay slave wages for people to go and dig them up. That they're doing this for reasons, and the more dependent we are on everyone else to supply our energy, the worst situation America is put in. And that's why I do think that this election has a major question to answer. And we'll kind of end on this note, Ed. You've watched both of the conventions. You've heard the speeches come from both sides of the aisle. You have not politicized this issue at all in our discussions. But is there a difference? Just the math, just the facts. Is there a difference between what Kamala Harris offers by way of energy policy and what Donald Trump has talked about on his stump speech? And from your kind of expert position, what do you perceive the differences to be, and what should people pay attention to?
That's a great question and a great point. I think that the differences are really stark. At the end of the day, one candidate, being Kamala Harris, really wants to limit the availability of inexpensive, abundant energy through banning fracking. Her administration has already put a moratorium on the issuance of additional LNG permits in the Gulf Coast and elsewhere in the United States. So, you know, listen to them when they tell you that they want to ban it, because that's really what they want to do. And the other candidate, being Trump, wants to drill, baby, drill and increase the availability of abundant, inexpensive energy. And so, again, being on Team Human Flourishing, we're all for abundant, inexpensive energy for all.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And it is very vital, friend. Look, you've got about 9 weeks, I guess, until the election, and some states start voting in just a few days for early voting. I would strongly encourage you, go to oilfacts.com, put your email in, become an OilFacts insider, and then use these facts in your discussions with people around you. But Ed, it's been great to be able to visit with you these last few weeks, and hopefully you'll be back soon.
I hope so, Kevin. It's been great to be with you all these weeks.
Kevin McCullough coming back from Times Square. Don't go anywhere.
Stick around for more of That Kevin. Next, That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough. Kevin McCullough.
All right, friends, I told you last hour we're in the final stretches of trying to help 600 deeply impoverished and near-death children get life-saving food with Food for the Poor. We have been doing this for the majority of the summer. And here as we begin fall, we have other priorities that we need to move on to. This is the last night we're able to advocate for what they're doing. But plain and simple, these children will die if they do not have food that helps sustain them for the next year. And for $80, you could give them 700 meals each to help them sustain that, to help them sustain their life. And I want to say thank you to the many of you that have been involved. We have seen just in the last week gifts come from Las Vegas, New Orleans, the middle of the country, Texas, Florida, New York, all over the country. People are saying, I want to help save a child's life, and I want to do everything I can to make sure that they do not go without food for the next year. 700 plus meals each is what you are providing when you give that gift of $80 tonight. And I would encourage you to make it a multiple. If you could do $160, that would take care of 2 children. $240 would take care of 3. But because of tonight and the match that's on, if you give an $80 gift, you're going to help 2 children get those 700 meals each. That's 1,400 meals in the next year, 2 meals per day that they will get to enjoy as they go through. If you do, if you are in the process of giving a $160 gift, normally that would take care of 2 children. Tonight, it's going to take care of 4 for the coming year. Again, 700 plus meals each for the entire coming year. Here's the phone number, 855-349-4673, 855-349-4673. And if you give a gift of $240, which would take care of 3 children, that's actually going to turn into 6 because you give it tonight. This is the last night that we're able to do anything with this. And I'm just begging you, please, we've got 160 children that we've rescued. There are 440 still on the list that we didn't get to. And if you'd prefer to give online, and a lot of you have, you can give at instagood.org, instagood.org, instagood.org. And if you'd prefer to give by text, you can text my name, Kevin, Kevin, to 93999, and they'll shoot you back a link that you can give right there on your phone. Text Kevin to 93999, go to instagood.org or dial 855-349-4673. And when you do, you are changing a person's life. And let me tell you about the types of children that you are impacting. There are children that Food for the Poor reaches through their network of pastors and clergy and ministry that are on the ground. By the way, none of the resources go through the government offices or the cartels, or depending on the country, the mob. These meals are delivered exclusively through their ministry partners that are on the ground, have been on the ground for 40 years in the 17 countries where these children exist, where the most impoverished children are. And I'm talking about the world's most impoverished children. I'm talking about Guatemala, where, children are dying every day because they just don't have enough food to eat. El Salvador, same picture. Haiti, maybe the poorest country on the planet. It's usually between them and Burundi in terms of who is the poorest, but deeply, deeply impoverished children. And personally, I went and saw what the poverty in this part of the world looks like. And I remember when I landed in Haiti the very first time, and it is quite an experience to go to the true third world and to experience poverty on this level. But I was with a church group, and we were going down, and I wanted to see what Food for the Poor was doing. And when we landed, I remember, first of all, I remember when the plane was coming into the little airport in Port-au-Prince, no, not Port-au-Prince, Cap-Haïtien, up in the north. When we were approaching the runway, I remember seeing stuff spread out all over the tip of the runway. And I'm asking one of the people there, I said, what is that? And they said, that's the laundromat. They were joking, but people were drying their laundry on the runway of the airport because that was a big, flat, dry spot that people could get sunshine and make sure that their laundry got dry. I remember taxiing a little bit after we landed, and finally the door opened, and I remember the smell that instantly filled the cabin of the airplane. I remember how our guide said, whatever you do, don't give anything to one of the children until you've talked to either the pastor or myself to tell you if it's all right. And I remember one of the people on our plane not doing that, and he gave a brand new toothbrush to a child, and suddenly there were 50 children with hands out asking for that same toothbrush. The desperation, the poverty, the sense of helplessness, I've never felt it that way. And I remember when we were served some very hot sandwiches that weren't intended to be hot. They were cold cut sandwiches, but they were in the open Haitian sun. And when one of the people on our trip could only eat about half of it and put the other half down, I remember kids grabbing it, fighting over it, and ended up sharing the small pieces of it because they were that hungry. Poverty has a smell, it has a taste, it has a look, it has a desperation, it has a sense of hopelessness. And I remember all of those experiences being imprinted upon me. But I remember something else too. I remember going to the first time I went to a Food for the Poor feeding program. And this was in the, rough and tumble part of one of the cities in Haiti. And I remember how orderly the children lined up. I remember how, graciously the ladies that were there that made the rice and the beans dished them out. And when there was a brother and a sister that came up, the brother who was in line first took his and he turned and he gave it to his sister. And then he asked if he could have more. I remember the solution that Food for the Poor was for those children. And friends, for 700 meals in the next year, that solution is going to provide the nutrition they need to survive. In Haiti, in Guatemala, in El Salvador, in the poorest places in the Western Hemisphere.
Ready or not, we'll be right back.